Welcome, friends of the Greasy Shop Rag. Today we're going to take a look at a Husqvarna 346XP chainsaw. Customer complaint is that it starts and dies. So if you watch these videos, you'll know that the first thing I always do is look in the fuel tank. I want to see what kind of fuel he's running in there. And, you know, if there's water in the bottom of the tank or what the condition of the fuel filter is. That's the first check that I usually do. Now you can see there's no fuel in this tank at all. I don't know if he just transported it that way or if his problem is that there's just enough fuel to make it pop but not enough to make it run. I don't know. I also like to pull the fuel filter off and pressure test the fuel line in the carburetor. I try to put 10 pounds of pressure on it, and you can see with this one it's not holding any pressure at all. So we may have stumbled across our problem right off the bat. Before I dig into the fuel system problem, I always like to look into the cylinder and make sure that whatever repair I'm going to do is going to be worthwhile. Because if this thing's scored, there's no point in me looking at a fuel system problem, right? Let's see what he's got in here for a spark plug. It looks like a brand new one. So he tried to fix his start and die problem by replacing the spark plug. Mainly because he wanted to do it himself, and that's one of the only things he knew how to do. I'm just guessing on that, but I see it a lot. So the saw does have spark. That doesn't mean that the ignition coil is right. You know, the timing could be off, or there could be other ignition module problems. But at least we know that it's got spark. So right here's our fuel line. It's the one that comes from the tank that has a filter on it. And I just popped it off the carburetor. Now what I'm going to do is put a different piece of hose in place of that fuel line. And then I'm going to pressure test the carburetor alone without the hose. Without the original hose. And you can see that I don't have that same leak that I had before. So I can assume that I have a hole in the fuel hose. And that would certainly explain his complaint if it was allowed to kind of prime up and then pop when you pulled on it to start it, but the fuel pump in the carburetor wasn't able to pull fuel out of the tank because of a hole in the hose. So we're going to investigate that. I have to pull the hose out from underneath the tray of the carburetor here. I've got to determine which one's the vent and which one's the fuel line I want to remove, so that's what I'm doing here. And it doesn't matter how rough I am on this, I'm planning on replacing it. There's not a lot of room to work here, but it can be done without separating the tank from the chassis. So here's our old fuel hose, and initially it doesn't look that bad. That's the point where it passes through the tank. I really don't see anything until I get to right there. And there is a hole in the hose. If I take my pick, I can push it right into the hose. So that would completely explain his complaint. We're going to put a new hose in here. I use these, I call them pigtail hoses. They're curled and they're tapered on the ends. The part number for that hose is going to be 591-375-201. So I'm going to push a tapered end into the hole in the tank. There's no grommet in the tank. There's just a hole. and this hose is going to push through kind of tight and seal itself in that hole. I need to push enough of it through that I can reach through the filler hole and grab it and pull it through. It's kind of a nice setup. You can easily access all this. Alright, now I want to flush cut the line because it's got a taper on it. And then I'll put his filter on there. Looks like he had, I think that's his original filter. It looks pretty new. Alright, now that the line is in the tank, I need to push the line up through that carburetor tray. And because this thing's got a curl in it, I'm having a little bit of a problem. I'm almost putting a knot in the hose here. Just got to make sure I don't pinch it off. Give it a bit of a twist and then pull it through. Flush cut the end of the hose. And then I can push it on the carburetor. Just like that. Now I removed that vent line from the air filter base in order to gain access to that. You can see I pulled some more hose through the filler spout. But that vent line on the air filter base, just a little bit loose, so there's kind of a memory on the end of the hose. I could replace it, or I could just flush cut it like this and then it'll push on there. I mean, that's just a vent hose anyway, so I'm not too concerned about it. Alright, we'll get some gas in here. Because that hose pushed in from the other side, if that seal was to leak between the hose and the tank, it'd be leaking right now, the way the saw is sitting. So we're going to kind of lift it up here and take a look and make sure that everything looks dry. You know, nothing dripping there. No wet spots when I take a look at it. Sounded like it primed up nice. So I'm just going to blow this air filter out a little bit carefully with compressed air. Make sure I don't damage it. Then I'll put the filter back on here and try and start the saw. And if it starts and runs, then that's all I'm going to have for you on the Husqvarna 346XP that needed a new fuel hose. Thanks for watching. Later.
Huh?